Most people think they know what a bee is. Yellow stripes, a stinger, a little jar of honey. That is the entire picture most of us carry. But that picture is missing roughly 19,999 other species. There are more than 20,000 distinct bee species alive on this planet right now. Not varieties, not regional strains. Separate species, each with its own biology, behavior, and relationship with the living world. The honeybee you picture when someone says the word bee represents a fraction of that total. Some bee species are completely solitary, living and dying without ever sharing a nest with another bee. Some nest underground, some in hollow plant stems, some in the abandoned shells of snails. The metallic sweat bee is smaller than your smallest fingernail. The Wallace's giant bee stretches nearly 4 centimeters long, wide enough to lay flat across a matchbox. But if you want to grasp what bees are capable of at full scale, look inside a single honeybee colony in the middle of summer. What you find there is not a nest. It is a city. A thriving colony can house up to 80,000 individual bees at once, all operating with a shared purpose so tightly coordinated that researchers have compared the whole structure to a single superorganism, one entity with a distributed, collective mind. Every bee has a role. Every movement serves a function. There are guard bees, nurse bees, foragers, builders. Nothing is wasted, no one idles. And then there is what happens outside that hive. A single worker bee, over the course of one day, can visit up to 5,000 flowers. 5,000. She is not drifting. She is executing. She memorizes bloom locations, reads ultraviolet patterns invisible to human eyes, and carries pollen loads that, scaled to her body weight, would be like a person hauling a small motorcycle across town and back. She will repeat this every day for roughly 6 weeks of active life. And in that entire lifetime, she will produce approximately 1/12 of a teaspoon of honey. That is the full return on 5,000 flower days. The scale of bee existence, once you actually see it, is not background noise anymore. It is something closer to incomprehensible. There is no queen giving orders. That is the part almost everyone gets wrong. The queen does not run the hive. She does not decide when the colony moves, where it builds, or what the workers do next. She lays eggs. Everything else, every strategic decision that keeps 50,000 animals alive, is made by the crowd itself with no manager, no memo, and no chain of command. This is what biologists call a superorganism. The colony behaves less like a collection of individuals and more like a single distributed brain, where intelligence lives in the connections between parts rather than in any one part. And the mechanisms it uses to think are genuinely startling. Take house hunting. When a hive grows too large and half the colony splits off in a swarm, those bees need a new home within days or they die. Scout bees fan out across the landscape, inspecting tree cavities, rock crevices, abandoned structures. When a scout finds a promising site, she returns and performs a waggle dance, a figure-8 movement that encodes direction, distance, and quality all at once. The longer and more vigorous the dance, the stronger her endorsement. Other scouts watch, then fly out to evaluate her recommendation themselves. Here is where it gets remarkable. Scouts supporting different sites essentially argue through dance. A scout backing a mediocre location gradually dances less enthusiastically. A scout behind an excellent site dances harder and longer, recruiting more followers to verify her choice. The colony reaches a decision not through any vote or authority, but through a process of iterative persuasion, a physical debate that continues until roughly 15 scouts are all dancing for the same location. That threshold, that quorum, is the signal to move. Researchers have found that swarms almost always select the objectively best available site, outperforming individual scouts who often misjudge quality on their own. The group is smarter than any member of it. This same logic governs foraging. Thousands of bees are constantly updating a living map of every flower patch within 2 miles, adjusting labor allocation in real time as nectar sources bloom and fade. No central dispatcher required. The hive does not think despite its lack of leadership. It thinks because of it. Remove the hierarchy, distribute the intelligence, and something emerges that no single bee could ever be. Most people think the waggle dance is just bees being bees, a cute little jiggle, maybe some kind of celebration. That is completely wrong. What you're actually watching is one of the most sophisticated communication systems ever discovered in the animal kingdom, a living GPS broadcast happening on the wall of a dark hive. Here is what is really going on. When a forager bee returns from a promising food source, she launches into a figure-8 movement on the surface of the comb. The critical part is the straight run in the middle, the waggle run, where she vibrates her abdomen and buzzes her wings. Every single element of that run carries encoded information. Distance comes first. The longer the waggle run lasts, the farther away the food is. Roughly 75 milliseconds of waggling corresponds to about 100 meters of flight. A run lasting 1 full second is telling her sisters. The flowers are roughly a kilometer out. The relationship is almost perfectly linear, calibrated to the actual energy cost of flying there, not just straight-line distance. Hills and headwinds get factored in automatically because the bee experienced them herself. Direction is even more elegant. The waggle run is performed at an angle on the vertical surface of the comb, and that angle directly mirrors the angle between the food source and the sun as seen from the hive entrance. Straight up means fly directly toward the sun. 30 degrees to the left of vertical means the food is 30 degrees to the left of the sun. The bees have essentially mapped three-dimensional outdoor space onto a two-dimensional vertical surface inside a dark box. And it gets more precise still. Bees know the sun moves across the sky, so they continuously update the dance angle throughout the day without ever going back outside to check. They carry an internal solar clock accurate enough to compensate for roughly 15 degrees of arc per hour. Finally, food quality is layered in through enthusiasm. A mediocre patch gets a few half-hearted circuits. A spectacular bloom triggers dozens of repetitions at high intensity, recruiting proportionally more workers. The colony collectively allocates its foraging workforce based on real-time quality signals, all without a single spoken word. Carl von Frisch spent decades decoding all of this and won the Nobel Prize in 1973 for proving it. The bees, of course, have been doing it for millions of years before anyone thought to look. She senses the threat before she even sees it. A new queen has hatched somewhere deep in the comb, and the old queen knows what happens next. This is not a kingdom. It is an arena. Inside a single hive, roughly 50,000 individuals live under one of the most ruthless social contracts in the animal kingdom. And the queen sits at the center of it, not as a pampered monarch, but as a biological machine running at full throttle. At her peak, she lays up to 2,000 eggs every single day. That is one egg every 40 seconds around the clock. Her entire body is built for it. Her abdomen stretches longer than any workers, and a dedicated retinue of attendants feeds, grooms, and cleans her constantly, because if she stops for even a moment, her output drops. But power here is fragile. When the colony grows crowded or the queen begins to weaken, workers start raising rivals. New queens fed exclusively on royal jelly, a protein-rich secretion that rewires the larva's development entirely. And when a new queen emerges, the outcome is almost always violent. Queens find each other in the dark of the hive and sting to kill. Unlike a worker's barbed stinger, a queen's is smooth. She can use it again and again. Sometimes workers seal rival queens inside their cells and starve them before they ever get the chance to fight. The hive decides who lives. Then there are the drones, the males. They exist for one purpose: to mate with a queen from another colony. They don't forage. They don't make honey. They don't even have stingers. For most of the warm season, the colony tolerates them, feeding them from the communal stores. But when autumn arrives and resources tighten, the workers turn. Drones are physically dragged from the hive, pushed past the entrance, and left outside to die in the cold. The colony cannot afford passengers through winter. Sentiment has nothing to do with it. What looks from the outside like a humming, harmonious community is, underneath, a place of constant negotiation, replacement, and sacrifice. Every role is disposable the moment it stops serving the collective. The queen rules only as long as she produces. The drones live only as long as they are useful. And the workers, they will enforce both rules without hesitation. A bee hovers in front of two cards. One shows a single black circle. The other is completely blank, nothing on it all. The bee stalls for just a moment, antennae twitching, and then lands on the blank card. She got it right. 0 is less than 1. Researchers at RMIT University in Australia trained honeybees to pick the card with fewer symbols, rewarding correct choices with sugar water and punishing wrong ones with quinine. When they finally introduced a completely blank card, representing 0, the bees chose it over cards bearing 1 symbol. They understood that nothing comes before 1 on the number line. 0 is an abstract, mathematical concept so sophisticated that ancient civilizations took thousands of years to formally define it. Human children don't reliably grasp it until around age 4. And a bee, with a brain containing roughly 1 million neurons, cracked it. But counting isn't the strangest thing in their repertoire. In a separate line of research, scientists showed bees flat, two-dimensional photographs of human faces, images that have no ecological relevance to a flower-visiting insect. The bees were rewarded for landing on one specific face and trained across multiple trials. They not only learned to identify it, they could still pick it out reliably 48 hours later when tested among new faces they had never seen. Their brains don't process faces the way ours do, but they solve the problem differently, treating the human face as a spatial arrangement of features, cataloging the distances and relationships between them like a map. Now here is where it gets genuinely unsettling that in a 2011 study from Newcastle University, researchers shook bees vigorously inside a container, mimicking a predator attack. Those bees were then offered an ambiguous scent, one they've been trained to associate with either reward or punishment. Undisturbed bees approached it with measured caution. The shaken bees pulled back. They anticipated the worst. Scientists recognize this as pessimistic cognitive bias, the same behavioral marker used to detect anxiety and negative emotional states in mammals. We don't typically talk about insects having moods, but these bees, by the same standards we apply to dogs and rats and primates, we're experiencing something that looks a great deal like fear, which raises a question worth sitting with. If the line between reflex and feeling is this blurry in something so small, where exactly does it fall? A single bee's sting delivers roughly 0.1 milligrams of venom. That sounds almost nothing, but crammed inside that microscopic drop are more than 50 distinct chemical compounds. A cocktail so precisely engineered it can trigger pain, paralysis, and mass panic all at once. The centerpiece is melittin, a peptide that punches directly through cell membranes and accounts for about half the dry weight of the venom. It is what produces that searing, fire-like burn. And interestingly, formic acid, one of the other compounds in the mix, is the same corrosive molecule released during the combustion of organic material. A bee sting, in a very literal chemical sense, shares something with fire, but venom is only half the story. Before a bee even deploys her stinger, she broadcasts a warning. Honeybees release isoamyl acetate, an alarm pheromone that smells like banana candy, from glands near the base of the stinger. The scent travels fast, recruits nearby guards instantly, and marks the threat. Once that chemical signal is in the air, the colony doesn't deliberate. It mobilizes against a larger invader, a hornet, a mouse, sometimes a human. Asian honeybees have an additional trick that has no parallel in the insect world. They engulf the intruder in a tight, vibrating ball of bodies. Inside that ball, the bees contract their flight muscles so rapidly that the temperature climbs to around 47 degrees Celsius, several degrees above what the bee can survive, but just high enough to cook the hornet alive. It is coordinated, calculated, and lethal, and it costs some of them their lives to pull it off. That sacrifice is not accidental. The European honeybee's stinger is barbed, designed to anchor into mammalian skin. When she pulls away, the stinger stays embedded, and with it, the entire venom sac, which keeps pumping for up to a minute after separation. The bee dies, but her venom delivery continues, and the torn tissue releases even more alarm pheromone, intensifying the colony's response. The dying bee effectively becomes a signal booster. What looks like a simple sting is actually a coordinated chemical and behavioral event, a sacrificial relay that can, if enough bees are involved, deliver a systemically dangerous dose. That single drop, 50 compounds, a pheromone alarm, a heat ball, a self-destruct mechanism. This is not defensive behavior. This is precision warfare. Every February, the largest insect migration in human history happens on American highways. Not in the wild, but in the backs of flatbed trucks. Beekeepers haul over 2 million hives from 40 states to California's Central Valley, where 500,000 acres of almond trees are about to bloom. Without those bees, there are no almonds. Not fewer almonds. None. Almonds require bee pollination to produce fruit, and they cannot pollinate themselves. That single crop tells you everything you need to know about what's at stake. Bees, mostly honeybees, but also thousands of wild species, are responsible for pollinating roughly 1/3 of everything humans eat. Not just almonds. Apples, blueberries, cherries, avocados, coffee, chocolate. The rich half of the human diet depends on a bee visiting a flower at the right moment. Without pollinators, global food production wouldn't just shrink. It would collapse into an unrecognizable version of itself, stripped of nutrition and variety. And here is the terrifying part. Since the mid-2000s, beekeepers began finding their hives empty. Not dead bees, empty. Worker bees simply vanished, leaving behind the queen, a few young bees, and full honey stores, as if the colony had been erased overnight. Scientists named it colony collapse disorder. In some years, American beekeepers have reported losing more than 40% of their managed hives. The cause isn't one thing. It's a collision of threats arriving all at once. Neonicotinoids, a class of pesticides applied to crops worldwide, impair bees' navigation and memory, leaving foragers unable to find their way home. Habitat loss has stripped the wildflower diversity bees depend on between bloom seasons, essentially leaving them nutritionally starved for months at a time. Monoculture farming, vast fields of a single crop, means bees eat the same thing for weeks and then nothing, the rough equivalent of a human diet made entirely of corn syrup. But the single most destructive force is a parasite the size of a pinhead, the Varroa destructor mite. It latches onto bee larvae, feeds on their fat bodies, weakens their immune systems, and transmits at least 5 deadly viruses in the process. Varroa has spread to every continent except Australia, and untreated hives rarely survive a second winter. Beekeepers now treat their colonies the way hospitals manage chronic patients. Constant monitoring, rotating chemical treatments, racing against resistance. The beekeeping the world fed is one that is quietly running out of time. What if the bee goes extinct before we figure out how to save it? And we've already built the replacement. That question is keeping scientists up at night, and the answers coming out of research labs right now are genuinely stranger than anything bees themselves have managed in 60 million years of evolution. Engineers at Harvard and Delft have been developing robotic micropollinators, insect-scale drones, some no heavier than a paperclip, capable of carrying pollen between flowers. They're not ready to replace a hive, not even close. But in controlled greenhouse tests, early prototypes have successfully transferred viable pollen, and the engineering is moving fast. The goal isn't to make bees obsolete. It's to have a backup plan if colony collapse doesn't stop. Meanwhile, AI is moving into the hive itself. Startups like Arnia and Bee Hero have deployed acoustic sensors and machine learning models that listen to the hum of a colony the way a doctor listens to a heartbeat. A healthy hive has a distinct frequency. A queenless hive sounds different. A mite-infested colony different still. These systems now alert beekeepers to problems days before a visible inspection would catch them. And the data from thousands of hives is training models that get sharper every season. Then there's the genetics frontier. Varroa destructor, the parasitic mite, has devastated bee populations across the northern hemisphere since the 1980s. Gene editing tools like CRISPR are now being used to identify and potentially amplify traits in queens that produce so-called hygienic bees, colonies that detect and remove infected larvae before the mite can reproduce. Some selectively bred hygienic lines already show mite resistance rates above 80% without chemical treatment. The goal is to make that resistance stable, heritable, and widely available to commercial beekeepers within the decade. And you don't have to work in a lab to be part of this. Citizen science platforms like the Great Sunflower Project and Bumblebee Watch have collected millions of observation records from ordinary people with smartphones, helping researchers map pollinator populations across continents with a resolution no field team could ever achieve alone. Bees built the world we eat from. Now, for the first time, we're using everything we have to return the favor. If that's the kind of story you want more of, hit subscribe. There's a lot more of Earth's hidden machinery left to unpack.